I do not believe all these your scheming lies. I am sterile. How could you be pregnant?
By accident, the maid got pregnant by the sterile billionaire, and he swore she was a con artist. But 5 years later, this happened. The pregnancy test shook in Emma's grip as she stared at the two lines that would ruin everything she'd built. Her employer, the ruthless billionaire Daniel Cross, had medical documentation from 3 different hospitals confirming he was irreversibly sterile. Any woman claiming to carry his child would be branded a fraud, a manipulator, a con artist trying to trap Manhattan's most powerful bachelor. Yet here she stood, 3 months pregnant, about to lose the only income keeping her younger sister in college back in Ohio. She had 48 hours before her mandatory health screening would expose the pregnancy. 48 hours before she'd face the man who would destroy her with a single phone call to his lawyers. What Daniel didn't know was that one devastating night, one moment when his controlled world shattered, one accident would change everything he thought he knew about his life. The question wasn't whether she was lying. The question was, how do you prove the impossible when no one wants to believe you? The Italian marble of the Cross penthouse in Manhattan gleamed under Emma Hayes' cloth as she polished it for the 4th time that month. Her knees ached, her shoulders burned, but complaints were a luxury she couldn't afford. This job paid for her younger sister Lily's college tuition in Ohio. At 23, she learned that survival required silence, invisible hard work, and staying beneath notice. Daniel Cross barely acknowledged her existence. The 38-year-old tech and real estate mogul moved through his Fifth Avenue penthouse like a storm, controlled, powerful, and utterly untouchable. His custom suits cost more than Emma's entire year's salary. His watch could fund a small hospital. He represented everything she would never be. Educated at Harvard, connected to New York's elite families, wealthy beyond imagination. But 3 months ago, everything changed. It had been the worst day of Daniel Cross's life. Emma remembered it with painful clarity because she'd never seen a powerful man break the way he did that night. She'd been finishing her evening duties around 11 p.m. when his business partner, Marcus Sullivan, the man he'd trusted for 15 years, called an emergency board meeting. By midnight, Daniel stormed back into the penthouse, his face carved from stone. Marcus had sold confidential information to their biggest competitor. A deal worth $2 billion, 3 years of work, collapsed in one evening of betrayal. Emma had retreated to the staff quarters, but at 1 a.m., her supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked frantically on her door. "Go check on Mr. Cross," the older woman hissed. "He's in his study. I heard glass breaking. You're the only one he doesn't shout at. Go." Emma found him surrounded by shattered crystal, expensive scotch pooling on the Persian rug. He'd removed his suit jacket. His shirt was unbuttoned. His eyes were devastated. "Sir?" she called softly from the doorway. "Are you all right?" He looked up, not really seeing her at first. Then his phone rang. He answered, and Emma watched his face crumble. "Mom, slow down. What hospital?" His voice cracked. "Brain tumor? How serious?" The phone nearly slipped from his hand. When he ended the call, he just sat there, staring at nothing. "My father," he said to the empty room, his voice hollow. "Stage 4 glioblastoma. They're saying 6 months, maybe less." Emma should have left, should have called his driver, his assistant, anyone appropriate. Instead, something in his devastation kept her frozen in place. Daniel reached for another bottle, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't open it. She moved forward instinctively, taking it from him, opening it, pouring a measured amount. "Everything I've built," he said, not to her specifically, just speaking into the void, "was so my father could see it, so he could be proud, so he could hold his grandchildren and know the Cross name would continue." He laughed bitterly, the sound broken. "But I can't give him that. The doctors confirmed it 5 years ago. I'm sterile. My father will die never knowing his bloodline continues." He drank straight from the bottle she'd poured. "Today took everything. My business partner betrayed me. $2 billion gone. My father is dying of cancer. My mother is breaking apart. And I'm sitting here, a billionaire who can't fix anything that actually matters." Tears ran down his face. This powerful man crying like his heart was being torn apart. "Why does God curse someday?" he whispered. "Why does everything fall apart at once?" Emma had knelt beside him, offering water, a cloth for his face, just quiet presence in his storm of grief. They talked for hours. He told her about his father teaching him to sail off Martha's Vineyard, about medical treatments in Switzerland that promised fertility but delivered nothing, about the loneliness of being wanted for money while being unable to give the one thing that actually mattered. Somewhere around 4 a.m., vulnerability became something else. A moment of human connection between two people who'd forgotten they could be seen. A mistake made in grief and exhaustion and the desperate need to feel less alone. By morning, he remembered nothing. She said nothing. Life returned to its familiar pattern. Employer and invisible maid. Boundaries firmly restored. Until now. Emma's hand moved to her still flat stomach as she heard his footsteps in the hallway. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, had delivered the ultimatum that morning with cold satisfaction. "Tell Mr. Cross about your condition, or I report you for misconduct. We run a respectable household. Whatever game you're playing ends today." Daniel entered through the main doors, phone pressed to his ear, closing another multi-million-dollar contract. He didn't glance at Emma. She was furniture, invisible, irrelevant. "Sir," she called, her voice barely steady. "May I speak with you privately?" Irritation flickered across his handsome face. "Make it quick." The words lodged in her throat as they entered his study. The same room where it had happened, where his father's diagnosis had destroyed him, where grief had briefly made them equals. "I'm pregnant," she said simply. There was no gentle way to deliver devastation. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to cold, lethal fury. He walked to his desk, pulled out a thick medical file, and threw it between them. "Read it," he commanded, his voice ice. "Read the part where specialists at 3 different hospitals confirmed I'm permanently sterile. Read the part where Swiss fertility experts said I will never father a child. Then explain to me how you're pregnant with my baby. Sir, I don't understand it either. But that night, your father's diagnosis." His laugh was cruel. "I was vulnerable, drunk, broken, and you saw an opportunity, didn't you? The poor maid sleeps with the devastated billionaire, claims his child, secures her future. How much do you want, Emma? Name your price for this con. It's not a con. Get out." His voice was quiet, deadlier than screaming. "You have until tomorrow morning to leave this apartment. Mrs. Patterson will prepare your final wages. If you ever contact me again, if you ever speak my name in connection with these lies, I will have you arrested for fraud and extortion. Do you understand me?" "Please, sir, just listen." "Security!" 2 guards materialized instantly. "Escort Miss Hayes to the staff quarters. She leaves at dawn." As they led her away, Emma looked back once. Daniel stood at his window, shoulders rigid with betrayal, convinced she'd played him during his worst moment. He truly believed she was a con artist. He truly believed she'd exploited his grief to trap him with an impossible claim. He had no idea that the impossible was growing inside her, and in 5 years the truth would find him whether he was ready or not. The 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn was nothing like the Cross penthouse, but it was home. Emma wiped flour from her hands as she watched her son, Noah, build elaborate structures with colorful blocks on the worn carpet. At 4 years old, he had his father's intense focus, his sharp mind, and those unmistakable dark blue eyes that seemed to see through everything. "Mama, look, I made the Brooklyn Bridge," Noah announced proudly, though his creation looked more like a wobbly tower about to collapse. "Perfect, my love," Emma smiled, her heart swelling with the fierce protectiveness that had carried her through impossible years. After being thrown out of the Cross penthouse, she'd returned to Ohio pregnant, disgraced, and alone. Her mother had cried, asking how Emma could be so foolish. Her younger sister Lily had looked at her with confused disappointment. She'd survived on her savings until they ran out, then worked at a diner while her belly grew rounder each day. She'd given birth in a county hospital with only a nurse's hand to hold. When they placed Noah in her arms, this impossible miracle, she'd wept for hours. Not from sadness, but from overwhelming love for this child the world said shouldn't exist. New York had called her back 2 years ago. Better opportunities, better schools for Noah, a chance to build something real. She worked 3 jobs now: morning shift at a bakery in Brooklyn, afternoon cleaning offices in Manhattan, evening alterations work at home. Sleep was a memory, rest was a fantasy. But Noah had food, clothes, toys from Target, and a mother who loved him more than life itself. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy?" Noah asked suddenly, his innocent question cutting deep as it always did. Emma knelt beside him, choosing her words carefully. "Your daddy is a very important man who doesn't know about you yet. When you're older, we'll figure it out together." "Is he a superhero?" Despite everything, Emma laughed. "Something like that." What she didn't tell her son was that his father's face was everywhere in New York, on billboards advertising cross technologies, in newspapers discussing his latest real estate acquisitions, on television where he sat on economic panels discussing America's future. Daniel Cross had grown even more powerful in 5 years, his empire expanding across the country. And according to the tabloids, he was finally engaged. The news had gutted Emma when she saw it last month. Daniel stood beside Victoria McCarthy, daughter of a political dynasty. Their engagement announcement splashed across every society page. They looked perfect together, both from wealthy families, both educated at Ivy League schools, both moving in circles Emma would never touch. She had no right to feel the jealousy twisting her stomach. She had no claim on the man who'd called her a con artist and had her thrown out. But Noah did. Noah had every right to know his father. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Emma frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. Opening the door cautiously, she found a well-dressed woman in her 50s, her expression serious but not unkind. "Emma Hayes?" the woman asked. "Yes, who are you?" "My name is Dr. Sarah Taylor. I'm a geneticist and fertility specialist. May I come in? We need to talk about your son." Emma's blood turned cold. "How do you know about my son?" Dr. Taylor's gaze moved past her to where Noah played. "Because 5 years ago, I was part of the team that diagnosed Daniel Cross as sterile, and recently I discovered something that changes everything." The world tilted. Emma gripped the doorframe. "What are you talking about?" "The diagnosis was incomplete," Dr. Taylor said quietly. "Not wrong exactly, but we missed something critical. Mr. Cross's condition was severe oligospermia, extremely low sperm count and motility. We told him he was sterile because his chances of naturally fathering a child were less than 1%. Statistically impossible." She paused, looking at Noah. "But impossible isn't the same as zero. I've spent months reviewing cases, tracking down anyone who might have conceived during that period. Because if there's a child out there, he deserves to know. Your name appeared in his household employment records. The timing matches perfectly. And that little boy has his eyes." Emma's legs nearly gave out. 5 years. 5 years of struggling alone, of being called a con artist, of believing she'd never be vindicated. And now this stranger stood at her door, casually destroying and rebuilding her entire reality. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma whispered. "Why not go directly to him?" "Because I need proof before I potentially destroy his engagement and reputation. I need your consent for a DNA test. If that child is his, Mr. Cross deserves to know the truth. And your son deserves to know his father." "He called me a con artist," Emma said, her voice breaking. "He threw me out with nothing. He made me feel like trash for telling him the truth. Why would he believe this now?" Dr. Taylor's expression softened. "Because this time, I'll have scientific proof. The question is, are you willing to turn your world upside down again to give your son his birthright?" Emma looked at Noah, still playing innocently, unaware his entire future balanced on this moment. She'd spent 5 years protecting him from rejection, from the pain of being unwanted. Could she really expose him to Daniel again? Could she face the man who'd crushed her? But then Noah looked up and smiled, that heartbreaking smile that was all Daniel Cross, and she knew her son deserved the truth. He deserved a father, even if that father had once destroyed her. "What do I need to do?" Emma asked. Dr. Taylor pulled out consent forms. "Just sign. I'll handle everything else. But I need to warn you, when this truth comes out, nothing will ever be the same for any of you." 5 days later, Emma received the call. The DNA results were conclusive with 99% certainty. Noah was Daniel Cross's biological son. The impossible had been proven. The con artist had been vindicated. And somewhere in his tower of wealth and power, Manhattan's most untouchable bachelor was about to learn that the woman he'd destroyed 5 years ago had been telling the truth all along. The question was, what would he do with that truth? The executive conference room at Cross Technologies occupied the entire top floor of the gleaming skyscraper in Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, but Daniel wasn't admiring the scenery. He stared at the DNA report on the table as if it might suddenly reveal itself as an elaborate forgery. "You're absolutely certain?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Dr. Sarah Taylor met his gaze without flinching. 99.9% certainty. "The child is yours, Mr. Cross. I've verified it through 3 separate laboratories using different methodologies. There's no error this time." "This time," Daniel repeated, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. "You mean the first time was the error? When you diagnosed me as sterile? When you gave me medical reports I built my entire understanding of my life around?" "It wasn't an error in the traditional sense," Dr. Taylor explained carefully. "Your sperm count and motility were so low that natural conception was statistically improbable. Less than 1% chance. We told you it was impossible because, medically speaking, it essentially was. But improbable isn't the same as zero." For the first time in years, Daniel's perfect control cracked. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping harshly against marble. "I called her a con artist. I had security throw her out of my home while she was carrying my child. And all this time," the sentence died. "How did you finish that thought? All this time you had a son you knew nothing about. All this time an innocent woman suffered because of your certainty. All this time you were wrong." "Where is she now?" he asked, his voice rough. "Brooklyn, small apartment. She works 3 jobs to support your son. His name is Noah. He's 4 years old." Dr. Taylor slid another envelope across the table. "These are photos. I thought you should see him before you make any decisions." Daniel's hands shook as he opened the envelope. The first photo showed a little boy with an enormous smile, holding a worn toy car. The second showed him eating mac and cheese with his hands, concentration on his young face. The third was a candid shot of him laughing at something off camera. Pure joy captured in that instant. He looked exactly like Daniel's childhood photos. The same eyes, the same serious expression even when smiling. The same way of tilting his head when curious. There was no denying it. This was his son, his child. The miracle he'd been told was medically impossible. "Does he know about me?" Daniel asked quietly. Emma told him his father is an important man who doesn't know about him yet. "She's protected you, Mr. Cross. Despite everything you did to her, she's never spoken ill of you to that child. She's never gone to the press, never tried to use this for money or attention. She just survived." Guilt was an unfamiliar emotion for Daniel Cross, but it crashed over him now in suffocating waves. "I need to see them. Today." "There's another complication," Dr. Taylor said carefully. "Your engagement to Victoria McCarthy. The wedding is in 2 months." "It's not a complication," Daniel's voice was steel. "It's my son. Everything else is secondary." But was it? As he drove through New York traffic toward Brooklyn, doubt crept in. His engagement to Victoria wasn't just romance. It was a strategic alliance between 2 of America's most powerful families. The McCarthys controlled major political connections. His marriage to Victoria would expand his influence exponentially. His father, now in hospice care, had made him promise to secure the family legacy through this union. And now suddenly he had a son with a woman who lived in Brooklyn, who worked 3 jobs, who existed in a completely different world from his own, a woman he'd wronged terribly, a woman who had every right to hate him. What was he supposed to do? Acknowledge Noah and watch his carefully constructed future explode? Ignore his own son to preserve his engagement? Try to navigate both worlds and satisfy no one? The apartment building was modest but well-maintained. Children played on the street while mothers watched from stoops. This was real New York, far from the insulated wealth of Fifth Avenue and the Hamptons. This was where actual people lived actual lives, struggling and surviving and finding joy in small moments. Daniel felt completely out of place in his tailored Tom Ford suit and Patek Philippe watch. Dr. Taylor had called ahead. When Emma opened the door, Daniel's breath caught. She was thinner than he remembered, worn by hard years but still beautiful, still dignified, still looking at him with those eyes that had seen his worst moment and his worst judgment. "Mr. Cross," she said formally, as if he were still her employer, as if he hadn't destroyed her life. "Emma, please, may I come in?" She stepped aside silently. The apartment was tiny, one bedroom, a small living area, a kitchenette, but it was spotlessly clean, filled with colorful drawings and children's books and evidence of a mother's fierce love. And there, sitting on the floor with his blocks, was his son. Noah looked up as Daniel entered. For a long moment they stared at each other, father and son meeting for the first time, neither knowing what to say. "Mama, who is this?" Noah asked, curious but unafraid. Emma knelt beside her son, her voice gentle. "Noah, remember how I told you your daddy is an important man? This is him. This is your father." The words hung in the air, heavy with years of absence and pain and missed moments. Noah studied Daniel with serious eyes. His eyes then said with a child's devastating honesty, "You're really tall, and you look sad." Something broke inside Daniel. He lowered himself to Noah's level, this powerful man kneeling on worn carpet before the son he'd never known existed. "I am sad," he admitted, his voice cracking, "because I missed 4 years of your life, because I didn't believe your mother when she told me the truth, because I made terrible mistakes that hurt people I should have protected." "Mama says everyone makes mistakes," Noah offered generously. "She says what matters is what you do after." Daniel looked up at Emma, tears burning his eyes for the first time in decades. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make up for what I did to you, but I want to try. Please let me try." Emma's expression was unreadable. "You're engaged to be married, Mr. Cross, to a woman who fits your world perfectly. What exactly are you offering us? Weekend visits when it's convenient? Money to ease your guilt? A secret second family you hide from your real life?" "I'm offering everything," Daniel said desperately. "I'm offering to make this right, whatever that takes. He's my son. You're his mother. That makes you part of my life now, whether convenient or not. And Victoria?" The question hung between them like a blade. Daniel thought of his fiancée, beautiful, sophisticated, politically connected. He thought of his father's dying wish, the business implications, the social expectations. Then he looked at his son, his miracle son, and knew there was only one answer. "I'll tell her the truth," he said quietly. "I'll deal with the consequences, but I won't hide my son. I won't make him a secret. I won't fail him the way I failed you." Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Pretty words, Mr. Cross. But you said pretty things 5 years ago, too, before you called me a con artist and had me thrown out. Why should I believe you now? Because now I have proof of my mistake. Because now I understand what I destroyed. Because now," he reached out tentatively, not quite touching her hand, "because now I want to deserve the second chance you have every right to deny me." She turned away, her voice thick. "You broke me. Do you understand that? You didn't just throw me out. You made me believe I was a liar. You made me doubt my own reality. I gave birth alone. I've worked myself to exhaustion for 5 years. And now you walk back in because DNA proved what I told you that night? I know, and I'm—" "Don't say you're sorry," she cut him off. "Sorry is just a word. What are you actually going to do?" Daniel stood slowly. "Whatever you need, whatever he needs. I'll prove it through action, not words." "Then start by leaving," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Because I need time to think. And you need to figure out what you're actually willing to sacrifice before you make promises you can't keep. The news broke 4 days later, and it broke catastrophically. Someone from one of the laboratories leaked the DNA results to New York's most aggressive tabloid. By morning, Daniel's face was plastered across every newspaper, website, and television screen in the country alongside the headline, "Billionaire's Secret Son." The maid he called a con artist was telling the truth. The media frenzy was immediate and vicious. Reporters camped outside Emma's building, shouting questions about their relationship, about Noah, about whether she wanted revenge or money. Photographers climbed fire escapes trying to get shots of the child who'd become overnight news. Social media exploded. Some defended Emma as a victim of wealthy male arrogance. Others accused her of opportunism despite the DNA proof. Everyone had theories about what would happen to Daniel's engagement. Emma kept Noah inside, away from cameras and chaos. She lived in peaceful anonymity for 5 years. Now strangers knew her name, her story, her private pain. She watched her son play with his toys, blissfully unaware his existence had become a national scandal, and wondered if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. Daniel's world imploded equally fast. His engagement to Victoria ended in a spectacular confrontation at her family's Upper East Side townhouse. Victoria threw her engagement ring at him, her face twisted with fury and humiliation. "A maid?" she hissed. "You have a child with a maid and you're just telling me now? Do you understand what you've done to me? To my family, we're a laughingstock." "I didn't know about the child until a week ago," Daniel said, trying to remain calm while his life collapsed. "The DNA test proved—" "I don't care what it proved. You should have handled this quietly, paid her off, made it disappear. Instead, you're parading your bastard around like some kind of noble confession." The word bastard, referring to Noah, ignited something dangerous in Daniel. "Watch your mouth, Victoria. That's my son you're talking about." "Your son with a nobody? Do you think society will accept this? You've destroyed everything for a woman who probably trapped you deliberately." "The DNA proves she didn't trap me. It proves I was wrong. It proves I owe her everything." "Then go," Victoria screamed. "Go play house with your maid and her child. But don't come crawling back when reality sets in and you realize what you've thrown away." The McCarthy family issued a public statement condemning Daniel's moral failings and withdrew from several joint business ventures. His board of directors called emergency meetings. Several major investors expressed concerns. The gossip columns speculated endlessly. Daniel ignored all of it. He hired the best security team in New York to protect Emma and Noah from the media circus. He had groceries delivered so they wouldn't have to face cameras. He sent lawyers to threaten any publication that printed Noah's photo without permission. And every evening, he came to Brooklyn himself, dressed in casual clothes instead of suits, trying to build a relationship with the son he'd never known. Noah adapted quickly. To him, having a father suddenly appear was exciting rather than complicated. He showed Daniel his drawings, taught him games, asked endless questions about business and buildings and why some people had so much while others struggled. It was Emma who remained distant. She allowed Daniel's visits because Noah deserved a father, but she kept an emotional wall between them that he couldn't breach. She was polite, practical, and completely closed off to anything deeper. "I want to move you both somewhere safer," Daniel said one evening after Noah fell asleep. They sat in her small living room, an ocean of unresolved pain between them. "This apartment isn't secure with all the media attention." "This apartment is my home," Emma replied coolly. "I've worked 3 jobs to afford it. I'm not abandoning it because you're suddenly concerned about our safety. I'm trying to protect my son." "You mean your son who you threw out before he was born? Your son you refused to believe existed? That son?" The words cut deep because they were true. Daniel absorbed the pain he deserved. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I can try to make the future better. Please, Emma. Let me help you. Let me be part of his life properly. You're part of his life. You visit every day. You pay for things I didn't ask for. What more do you want?" "I want—" He stopped, unsure how to finish. What did he want? To turn back time? To fix his mistakes? To somehow earn forgiveness from the woman he'd wronged so terribly? "I want us to be a family." Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. A family? You live in a penthouse on Fifth Avenue. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. You attend charity galas and board meetings. I clean offices and hem pants. We exist in completely different worlds, Mr. Cross. The only thing connecting us is the son you didn't want. That's not fair. Fair? For the first time, her composure cracked. I told you the truth, and you called me a con artist. You had me thrown out with nothing. I gave birth alone. I've worked myself to exhaustion for 5 years, and now you want to play happy family because DNA proved what I said 5 years ago? Tears streamed down her face. 5 years of suppressed pain finally breaking free. Daniel reached for her instinctively, but she flinched away. Don't touch me. Don't pretend you care about anything except easing your guilt. You have your heir now. You have proof your legacy continues. That's what really matters to you, isn't it? That's not true, Daniel said desperately. Emma, I was wrong. I was cruel. I was so consumed by my own pain that I couldn't see yours. But I see it now. I see what you've sacrificed. I see what you've built for our son, despite everything I did to destroy you. And I'm in awe of you. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much hardship to easily trust. Words, Mr. Cross, just words, but actions, actually changing, actually seeing me as more than a problem to manage. I'll believe that when I see it. Before he could respond, Daniel's phone rang. His assistant's voice was panicked. Sir, there's been an incident. Someone vandalized your father's memorial wing at the hospital. They spray-painted con artist's son across the entrance. The police think it's connected to the scandal. The McCarthy family's reach was longer and more vindictive than Daniel had anticipated. They were sending a message. And if they would vandalize property, what else might they do? He looked at Emma and Noah, suddenly seeing how vulnerable they were, how exposed, how his world had put them in danger. Pack your things, he said urgently. Both of you, right now. You're coming with me where I can protect you properly. This isn't negotiable anymore. The safe house was located in a quiet, gated community in Westchester, far from media chaos and potential threats. It wasn't the Cross penthouse. Daniel had deliberately chosen somewhere neutral, somewhere that could feel like home rather than a display of wealth. 3 bedrooms, a backyard where Noah could play safely, and security that was thorough but discreet. Emma hated needing this protection, hated that her hard-won independence had been compromised by circumstances beyond her control. But as she watched Noah run freely in the backyard, without fear of cameras or strangers, she admitted Daniel had been right about the danger. The vandalism investigation revealed that associates of the McCarthy family had been responsible, attempting to intimidate Daniel into hiding his son and reconciling the engagement. Instead, the revelation backfired spectacularly. Public opinion, initially divided, swung heavily in Daniel's favor. People admired him for choosing his child over a strategic marriage. But Daniel wasn't interested in public opinion anymore. He was interested in the woman who still wouldn't look at him without pain in her eyes, and the son who was slowly teaching him what actually mattered in life. Dad, why do you look sad again? Noah asked one afternoon while they built a puzzle together. I'm thinking about your mom, Daniel admitted. I hurt her very badly before you were born. I'm trying to figure out how to make her understand I'm sorry. Noah considered this with childish wisdom. Mom says sorry is just a word. She says what matters is what you do next. So what are you doing next? Out of the mouths of children, what was he doing next? Grand gestures felt empty. Money felt insulting. Words had already failed. The answer came unexpectedly during a conversation with Dr. Taylor, who had become an unlikely ally throughout this chaos. The fertility clinic where I work, she said carefully, is severely underfunded. We see dozens of couples every month who can't afford treatments that might give them the families they desperately want. Women like Emma, who society judges unfairly when they become pregnant outside marriage. We could do so much more with proper resources. An idea formed, not a grand gesture for Emma specifically, but meaningful action that aligned with everything this experience had taught him. Daniel established the Noah Cross Foundation, named for his son, dedicated to supporting single mothers, funding fertility treatments for those who couldn't afford them, and providing job training and education opportunities for women in circumstances similar to Emma's. He quietly ensured that the families of his former household staff received scholarships and support. He personally apologized to each person whose life had been collateral damage in his previous certainty and prejudice. It wasn't about publicity. He specifically forbade any media coverage. It was about actually changing, actually doing better, actually becoming worthy of the second chance Emma had given him simply by not exposing him years ago when she could have. Weeks passed in the safe house. Slowly, carefully, something shifted between them. Daniel learned to cook simple meals because Emma was exhausted from years of constant work. Emma taught him how to tie Noah's shoes and navigate the practical realities of parenting. They established routines, breakfast together, bedtime stories with Noah between them, conversations after their sons slept where they talked about everything except the giant complicated feelings neither knew how to address. One evening, Noah fell asleep during a movie, curled against Daniel's side. Emma moved to carry him to bed, but Daniel stopped her gently. "Let me," he said softly. "Please, I've missed so much already." He carried his son carefully, this little miracle who looked like him, and laughed with pure joy and asked impossible questions about why the world worked the way it did. Tucking Noah into bed, Daniel felt overwhelming gratitude for this child he'd never expected to have. Born from a night of vulnerability he barely remembered, but would forever be thankful for. When he returned to the living room, Emma was crying silently on the couch. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, alarmed. "Did something happen?" "You," she whispered. "You happened 5 years ago. You destroyed me. And now you're here being exactly the father Noah needs, being exactly the partner I once dreamed of having. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to reconcile the man who threw me out with the man who tucks his son in and establishes foundations for women he'll never meet. I don't know how to forgive you when you're finally becoming someone worth forgiving." Daniel sat beside her, careful to maintain distance but close enough to be present. "I don't expect forgiveness, Emma. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know something. That night we spent together, the night I can barely remember because I was drowning in scotch and self-pity. That night we spent together," Daniel continued, his voice raw. "The night I can barely remember because I was drowning in scotch and self-pity, you showed me kindness when I least deserved it. You saw past the money and the reputation and the walls I'd built. You treated me like a human being who was hurting. That's who you are. Someone who gives compassion even when it costs you everything. And look where it got me," she said bitterly. "It got you Noah. It got you strength I can't even comprehend. It got you 5 years of being the most incredible mother imaginable despite impossible circumstances. Yes, I made those circumstances impossible. Yes, I failed you catastrophically. But you didn't fail him. You didn't fail yourself. You survived and thrived and built a life with nothing but determination and love. That's not weakness, Emma. That's the kind of strength I've spent my entire life pretending to have but never actually possessed." She turned to look at him fully for the first time in weeks. "What do you want from me, Daniel?" "Really want?" He took a breath, knowing this answer would determine everything. "I want you to believe that people can change. I want you to see that I'm not the man who threw you out anymore. Because that experience, meeting Noah, watching you be extraordinary every single day, broke something in me that needed to break. I want to be your partner in raising our son. And someday, if you ever find it in your heart to consider it, I want to be more than that. I want to be worthy of the woman who saw my humanity when I had forgotten I had any." "That's a lot to want," Emma said quietly. "I know, and I'm willing to spend however long it takes earning it. Years if necessary, a lifetime." Emma was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "The foundation you started, the one named for Noah. What about it? I want to work there. Not as some symbolic gesture because I'm your son's mother, but actually work. Use my experience to help women whose society dismisses the way you dismissed me. Turn my pain into something useful. Can you handle that? Your son's mother working at your foundation as an equal, not as someone you rescued." Daniel felt hope kindle for the first time in weeks. She wasn't saying yes to him, but she was saying yes to being in his life beyond just co-parenting. That was a start. That was more than he deserved. "I'd be honored," he said honestly, "but only if you let me pay you properly and respect your expertise. No special treatment, no pity hires. You earn your position." A small smile tugged at Emma's lips, the first real smile he'd seen from her since the DNA reveal. Deal. 6 months later, the Noah Cross Foundation opened its first community center in Brooklyn. Emma stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, no longer hiding from cameras but standing tall as the foundation's director of community outreach. Noah held both his parents' hands, proudly telling anyone who would listen that his mom was helping people and his dad was learning to be better every day. The media narrative had shifted completely. This wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a redemption story, not a conventional one, not an easy one, but a real story about flawed people trying to do better, about impossible circumstances creating unexpected families, about second chances earned through genuine change. Daniel stood beside Emma during the ceremony, not as her employer or even as her child's father, but as her partner. They weren't married. That was a conversation for the future, one they were building towards slowly and carefully. But they were together in the ways that mattered, raising Noah, supporting each other's growth, learning to trust again. "Thank you," he whispered to her as the crowd applauded, "for giving me the chance to become someone worthy of our son, worthy of you." Emma squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with tears she no longer hid. "Thank you for becoming that person, for proving that even the biggest mistakes can become the foundation for something beautiful." Noah tugged at their hands impatiently. "Mom! Dad! Can we eat now? They have pizza!" They laughed, both of them together, and followed their son into the celebration. 5 years ago, Emma had been thrown out with nothing but an impossible truth. Today, she stood in a community center, named for her son, surrounded by people whose lives would be changed by her strength and vision, holding the hand of the man who had destroyed her, and then spent every day since learning to build something better from the ruins. The story didn't have a neat, perfect ending tied with a bow. Real life was messier than that, but it had something better. Honest growth, earned redemption, and a family built not on perfection, but on the willingness to keep trying even after catastrophic failure. Sometimes the impossible becomes real. Sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the greatest miracles. Sometimes a night of vulnerability and a child no one expected become the catalyst that transforms everyone involved into better versions of themselves. And sometimes, just sometimes, the maid and the billionaire find their way to each other, not through fantasy, but through the hard work of becoming people worthy of the love they're building together. If this story moved you, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. The USA, the UK, South Africa, anywhere in the world. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that even on our darkest nights, truth always finds its way into the light. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about love, justice, and what it truly means to be human.